Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight, and thanks for once again making Justice #1 all last weekend. Thank you. And what a show on tap for tonight. Kellyanne Conway, Anthony Scaramucci, both live. Candace Owens also. Patty Blagojevich, wife of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, joins me to talk about the big move President Trump is considering for her husband. But first, as you know, if you're a regular Justice viewer, I do an opening statement at this time every Saturday. And more often than not, it's about whatever's gotten me fired up that week. And this week, I am fired up. I am angry, but I'm even more confused. Confused as to why Congressman Trey Gowdy of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, one of the few people in Washington who has the intelligence, the expertise, and the ability to see through the nonsense, if not illegality, going on at the FBI and the Department of Justice, Trey Gowdy would say this about a spy placed in the Trump campaign.
I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
So why was I stunned? And why was I upset with that answer? Number one, Trey Gowdy knows he's not supposed to confirm or deny Spygate. Number two, saying that the placing of a spy or a confidential human source, as the big shots call it, in the Trump campaign has nothing to do with Donald Trump is ridiculous. But instead of me taking on Trey Gowdy tonight in an opening statement, which I fully intended to do, I instead decided to get some insight into what may be his thinking from some of his closest colleagues. So joining me now, Congressman Jim Jordan, Chairman Mark Meadows, and Congressman Ron DeSantis, all member of the Freedom Caucus and unrelenting voices in the fight for truth in this Russia probe, all on the the House Oversight and Reform Committee. Now, I'm going to start with you, Mark Meadows. Under no circumstances would anyone even think of placing a spy, or as they want to call it, a confidential human source, someone who clearly has foreign intelligence capabilities in the campaign of a man running for president of the United States. It has never happened in the history of this country, but these guys did it. So why shouldn't I be furious? And who do they think they're kidding?
Well, Judge, you should be furious, and I can tell you that as we look at the evidence, and Jim and I and Ron have read thousands of pages as we look at this, you should be furious because whether it's spying on the Trump campaign or the Bernie Sanders campaign or any presidential campaign, it's wrong. And what we do have is a growing body of evidence that would suggest just the opposite of what my good friend Trey Gowdy said, is indeed the FBI and DOJ did do things improperly. We know that indeed that there was informants within the Trump campaign prior to the FBI opening an investigation.
We'll
so we've got to make
yeah.
sure that we get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and that point is a very important one, and I want my viewers to understand that the timeline here is extremely significant. Now, that bozo Clapper made a statement on The View, and I think we may have it, and I'm going to ask Jim Jordan to take a listen to it.
Was the FBI spying on Trump's campaign?
No, they were not. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing, trying to understand, were the Russians infiltrating, trying to gain access, trying to gain leverage and influence.
So why doesn't he like
what they do?
So why doesn't he like that? He should be happy that.
Well, he should be.
Okay, so Jim Jordan, I think you know where I'm going with this. Since when do we put spies in a presidential campaign to find out what the Russians are doing? Why not intercept them on the way in unless you're trying to infiltrate the president's campaign?
And more importantly, Judge, why not tell the Trump campaign? Why not tell the candidate himself? Why not tell the guy who's now president of the United States, hey, we think Russians are trying to infiltrate your campaign, work with people on the periphery? Why not give them a briefing, a defensive briefing? That didn't take place. So that to me is the fundamental reason. And to say he doesn't like the term spy, what else can you call it? It wasn't an informant. It wasn't inside. It was someone from the outside contacting people associated with the Trump campaign to try to get information. If that's not a spy, I don't know what is.
Well, you know what's interesting, Jim, is that I think it was Comey who said, it's not spy, a confidential source, but then he never answers it. He just says there's a difference.
Yeah, Judge, and the FBI and the DOJ want us to say, oh, you can trust us now. We're giving you a briefing. They gave these guys a briefing last week, didn't show them any information, to my understanding.
Well, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going.
But think about this. We've caught them hiding information from us in the past. They hid the fact that Peter Strzok and Judge Contreras were friends. The same, a FISA court Judge Contreras, the same judge who heard Flynn's case. They tried to hide that from us, redacted that information when they gave us some of the Strzok page text messages. So now they tell us, don't worry, even though you caught us hiding information from us, don't worry, you can trust us now.
But you know what's interesting, Congressman Jordan, is the fact that then Contreras is recused from the case, so clearly there was wrongdoing there, like within a week. But I want to go to Congressman DeSantis. Trey Gowdy makes this statement, which unfortunately reminds me of Clapper's statement, basically saying, I'm going to rely on Rod Rosenstein from the Department of Justice, who's put Mueller in there after Mueller was taken to be head of the FBI, and Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI. All right. He then says, oh, well, I don't believe any of this was a problem, and my fellow Americans would want this to happen. The guy is too smart, Ron. He is too sophisticated. He is a prosecutor. He's, in fact, one of my heroes. I got to tell you that. I always loved Trey Gowdy, but I don't know if he went to the dark side or what's going on here. So why would Trey Gowdy, who understands credibility, understands lying, understands a courtroom, talk to Christopher Wray, Rod Rosenstein, and say, I haven't seen the documents, but hey, I believe everything they're saying? That's hogwash.
Well, look, I mean, I disagree with his analysis, and it goes to what Jim said, is obviously they should have just told candidate Trump if this was something that they were really concerned about. Instead, they chose to take an aggressive posture vis-a-vis the entire campaign, and they continued that. They launched this massive counterintelligence investigation based off Papadopoulos saying something to Downer, and we now know, Judge, when Downer reported that to U.S. authorities, he didn't even mention emails. It was supposedly, oh, the emails got hacked. He heard about emails. There was never a discussion about emails. So the start of this is as thin as you can possibly be. And I would also say there was more information or evidence that would require you to surveil Hillary's campaign than Trump's campaign.
Which was
look at the national security implications with the emails. Look at the Clinton Foundation. Look at the fact that they were paying a foreign national, Christopher Steele, to collect dirt on candidate Donald Trump, and yet they never took any aggressive actions vis-a-vis Hillary. It's a big double standard.
Well, you know what, but we're going to go beyond double standard tonight, but I want to go back to Congressman Meadows. So we're now supposed to take the word of the FBI and the Department of Justice when they started this investigation, or the FBI did, under the guise of it being a counterintelligence investigation. Now, I want my viewers, I want you to follow this. There is an ambassador from Australia who invites a low-level, fourth-layer volunteer on the Trump campaign to have a drink at a bar in the United Kingdom. All right? And then this kid supposedly says, hey, they got dirt on Hillary Clinton from the Russians. Now, the problem with that is the guy who's the ambassador from Australia, he was involved in $25 million from Australia going to the Clinton Foundation. So let me just remind my viewers, the ambassador from Australia, $25 million going to the Clinton Foundation, is the guy who basically gets the information to say to the FBI, we got to start a counterintelligence investigation. That smells to high hell. or heaven.
Well, it does smell. I think probably the other thing, Judge, is this. When we look at all of this, the collusion narrative is really more a collusion narrative with the Hillary Clinton campaign and Christopher Steele and some of the other contacts. When we see this, all the evidence would suggest that the FBI and DOJ are not coming clean. Jim Jordan said this right. You know, we're having to not only get documents, but read those documents and then find the evidence that they should have been forthcoming with. You know, it's not just about a judge. It's about the fact that there was redactions made over and over again. It's the fact that Brennan, the CIA director, actually briefed Harry Reid on some of this very information with the knowledge of the White House and colluded with the FBI.
The Obama White House.
Exactly.
Okay, so
we've got to get to the bottom of it. We need the documents.
Well, that's where I'm going in about 2 minutes. So give me a second here. I want my viewers to kind of see what's going on here. So Rod Rosenstein, the guy who appoints Mueller, who's a friend of Comey, to investigate the president of the United States because Rosenstein convinced Sessions to back out. I mean, the whole thing, if you wrote a movie on this, no one would believe it. He says that the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, that's constitutionally obligated to have oversight over his own department, the Department of Justice, is committing extortion. Because the extortion, that's a quote, because you guys want the information that you're entitled to have. What say you, whoever's next?
Well, it can't be extortion, Judge, when it's your constitutional duty. We have an obligation as a separate and equal branch of government to get the information, to get answers for the American people. I have the utmost respect for Trey Gowdy, but when he made the statement, the FBI behaved exactly like my fellow citizens would want them to behave. Really? The FBI behaved appropriately when James Comey didn't tell the American people that the guy he leaked information through, Daniel Richmond, was actually an employee of the FBI? Was Andy McCabe behaving appropriately when he lied 3 times under oath? Were Strzok and Page, when they said all the terrible things they said about the President of the United States, behaving appropriately? And when they took the dossier to the court and didn't tell the court who paid for it and who wrote it had been terminated?
When are you going to do something? What we need is McConnell and we need Paul Ryan to get their big boy pants on and do something. The American public is being torn apart over this unrelenting investigation that just won't end. And the FBI and the DOJ are stalling. They're redacting. They're not complying with subpoenas. They're a bunch of, at the upper echelon, there are a bunch of fraudsters right now trying to make you look like fools and trying to make this 2018 election get past them so that they can say that the president is corrupt. So,
Judge,
what are you going to do?
Judge, let me just say, I mean, one, Rosenstein should be recused from this.
How?
He wrote the memo saying to fire Comey. He should be recused.
Guys,
we should fight for that.
I know the intellectual arguments. My viewers want to know, what is the next step? What are you guys going to do? Does
Judge,
the president need
step.
to declassify? Tell me, Jim.
Yes, he needs to do that. But the next step is we're going to start deposing witnesses this month. We should have done it a long time ago, but we finally pushed. We're going to depose Priest-Stepp. We're going to depose Steinbach, other people at the FBI. And what we're pushing for is we need a deposition of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. So that needs to happen ASAP. Should have happened months ago, you're right. But let's do that. And the president should, in fact, we the 3 of us sent a letter to him, Judge. We've asked the president to give us all the information we're entitled to see.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the question, guys. How does the president know what to seek to declare? Other than the FISA warrant and the application, if all this stuff is being prevented from his seeing it because they're covering up the dirty work.
The August 2nd memo.
Here's the interesting thing, Judge. The president is all for transparency. Whether it helps him or hurts him, he wants to get the message out. And I think that that's the message that your viewers and the American people need to hear. It's all about transparency, and it's time that if the DOJ and FBI will not do it, they must be held in contempt. We must put pressure on our leadership to do that. And if they're not going to come forth,
I want all my viewers to get in touch with Paul Call Ryan, tell him to get off his duff, get the leadership behind this thing, and whoever's got to impeach Rod Rosenstein's got to do it. And if Jeff Sessions can't do his job because he's too scared or recusing himself, maybe he ought to resign himself. But that's just me. Congressman Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Ron DeSantis, thanks so much to all of you for being here tonight.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This Monday will mark President Trump's 500th day in office. Joining me now to discuss that and all of the developing news this week is Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway. Good evening, Kellyanne. Thank you so much for taking time on a Saturday night. We get it.
Good
it's
evening,
a
Judge
night.
Jeanine, and happy, healthy birthday to you.
Thank you. Now they're all going to Google. All right, Kellyanne, 500 days. What has the president accomplished? And don't go through a long list, but the big one, the big things that...
Well, I could go through a long list, but I'll just give you the highlights. That's the whole point, isn't it? There's so much that's happened. The sheer volume and velocity with which this president does his work and progresses on behalf of the American people. Jeanine, very simply, we're more prosperous, we're more secure, and our government is more accountable. Any one major achievement taken by itself would be enough in the first 500 days. But when you think of all of them put together, ISIS is decimated. We are being respected on the world stage. This president's leadership has brought North Korea literally to the White House, literally to the negotiating table, the discussion table. And as the president said yesterday, a meeting will take place on June 12th. South Korea and Japan have also been very helpful in getting that to happen. The jobs numbers. The New York Times itself admitted yesterday they run out of ways to describe these jobs numbers, meaning they've exhausted all the superlatives. Listen, America, if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're a teenager, if you're African American, if you're Asian, if you're Hispanic, you have the lowest unemployment rate in 18 years, if ever. For only the 7th time since 1970, Jeanine, the unemployment rate is below 4%. The 7th time since 1970. Think of that, in 48 years. That doesn't happen by coincidence. That happens by causation. And Jeanine, right up your alley, 1/8 of our U.S. Circuit Court now it includes a Trump judge. That's very important. 21 U.S. Circuit judges, and of course, Justice Neil Gorsuch to the United States Supreme Court. So everywhere you look, there's Trump progress, the regulatory reduction, small business confidence, consumer confidence. It's all around us. And those who deny it are just spitting into the wind, as they always are. But who cares? Yeah. We won't even pay attention. He's there for the forgotten man and the forgotten woman, not the cranks on cable TV who don't want to give him any credit.
You know, and so I want to go into that, Kellyanne, now. You know, when you talk about the cranks on TV, Nancy Pelosi, when she heard that the meeting was off with Kim Jong-un, she basically was almost cheering and saying it was a big win for Kim Jong-un. And now that it's back on for June 12th, and, you know, all the naysayers said, oh, it'll never be back on, it'll never be back on. Americans have to say to themselves, this guy really does know what he's doing. He's bringing Kim Jong-un to the table. Yes?
Literally. And everyone should be happy about it. Jeanine, a denuclearized Korean peninsula is in everybody's interest. I don't know why Democrats would cheer the lowering of the fortunes or the rising of the probability that maybe the meeting wouldn't happen. It is the president of the United States who sent that letter only 10 days ago, only 8 days before North Korea was here in Washington, D.C., trying to get to the next step for that June 12th summit to actually occur. And that letter from the president covered the entire waterfront, that it was North Korea who extended the invitation. The United States accepted it. Looked like things weren't happening. That's fine. Meeting canceled. But the president, and now it's back on. The president himself said on Thursday, on the record to the media, that it may take more than one meeting. Jeanine, we've had nearly 70 years of war. This president has been at it for 7 weeks, 7 months. He and Secretary of State Pompeo in earnest on this issue. It's been a very short period of time, but people should stop cheering depending on who's involved, and they should actually look at the substance of the issue. And that's why I have such faith in the American people. They see it. They know we're more prosperous, we're more secure, and that's why we're calling Monday 500 Days of American Greatness. Any one of these accomplishments by itself would be plenty. All right. But all of them put together is 500 Days of American Greatness. And if people aren't going to get the message out, we will. Okay, and you are. But I must tell you, you know, with all the stuff that happened this week, with that Samantha Bee and the horrible things she said about Ivanka, and I have always said Ivanka is a woman who has spent her adult career
trying to empower women. She is someone who has done everything she can, not just in the United States, but around the world, to give women the ability to start businesses. But so the president is in Washington. He works 24/7 and he never stops. But the hits just keep on coming. Does it affect him at all?
Not really, and I'll tell you why. The president sees in the faces of the American people, especially when he gets out of Washington and he travels. He met with families from Santa Fe, off the record, no media in the room. On Thursday, I happened to be there with him. He goes out he went out to Nashville. He travels about once or twice a week now, will continue to. And when he's out there with the people who are so excited about his progress, he sees that it matters. And look, he's going to go forward. And as for Ivanka, the Ivanka legacy will be great for women. She's got so much investment in, and it's incredible, and that's what matters in the end.
All right, Kellyanne Conway, thanks so much for being with us tonight. And the Mooch, Scaramucci, is still on deck, plus Street Justice take on Samantha Bee. And next, President Trump goes on the record saying he's considering a move that could free controversial former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. But will it happen? Joining me next live is Patty Blagojevich, the former governor's wife. It's a Justice exclusive, and it's next. Developing tonight, the president's still considering a possible pardon of celebrity TV personality Martha Stewart and commuting the sentence of controversial former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. This as it did pardon conservative commentator Dinesh D'Souza this week. Now, D'Souza says that he was singled out for prosecution by former President Obama's administration because of his conservative politics. In fact, he wrote a not-so-flattering movie about President Obama. But joining me now on a Justice exclusive is Patty Blagojevich, former Illinois governor's wife. Patty, good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you, Judge. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, your husband, Rod, has been in jail for how many years?
He's going on into his 7th year right now.
Okay. And how old were your children when he first went to jail?
Well, let's see, it was 7 years ago. So my little one was in 4th grade, and my older one, I think I go by grades instead. Yeah. And my older one was in 7th grade, and it's really tough.
Yeah, but now your older one is how old? When she was in 7th grade?
So my older one's graduating from college this month.
Wow,
so,
he missed
and my little one, her high school graduation, it was awful. Senior prom, all those things that, all those big special events he missed, but most importantly, he missed those like everyday, driving her to school, teaching her to drive, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And my younger one's now 15 and so finishing up her freshman year of high school. So
and I remember I was living in Chicago at that time, and I remember your husband walking out on the street, and people, I think that, he was on trial, but people love this guy. And there are many who feel, and I believe maybe the president does as well, that, the guy was just kind of practicing politics, that he never really got any money or in exchange or gifts or, we hear about this stuff all the time in Washington. But he seemed to be on the bad side, like Dinesh D'Souza, of the Obama administration. Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah. The same people that, went after Mr. D'Souza are the same people that went after my husband, the same people that are going after the president now. It's the same MO, and they're using their offices to try to undo elections and try to play politics instead of trying to do what they're supposed to do, which is to seek justice. And, our system of government's got a system of checks and balances for a reason, right? And sometimes the courts and these prosecutors get it wrong, whether, maliciously or just by accident. And it takes a strong leader like President Trump to right those wrongs.
But, it's
somebody
interesting,
with a sense of
Patty,
justice.
it's very interesting when you say the same prosecutors. And I think my viewers need to understand what you're saying. The guy who prosecuted your husband was a guy by the name of Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald is pals with Comey, who put Martha Stewart in prison. And Fitzgerald is the one who is now representing Comey. And, it's like like this triumvirate of Comey, Fitzgerald, and Comey's other attorney, Kelly, who have together, you know, kind of gone over to the dark side, many think, in terms of the way they're handling these cases.
Absolutely. You know, they create crimes when there are no crimes. This is the case with my husband. They were this ridiculous selling of the Senate seat crime that they invented was overturned on appeal years ago. People don't understand that. Right. That was considered political log rolling, and so they make up crimes that where there are none, and they, you know, make a big splash in the press just to, you know, try to bring down people that are either controversial or people that they just don't like.
They don't like if they're part of the Obama group. But Patty Blagojevich, I want to wish you much luck on this, but I have one quick question. Is your husband's hair still as thick as it used to be? He was known for his hair. Is it?
Yeah, he's very blessed that way.
Shouldn't we all be? Patty Blagojevich, much luck and prayers to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. And Candace Owens from Turning Point USA is just minutes away. But next, the Mooch comes to Justice Anthony Scaramucci, standing by live to talk about this week in the White House and more. Don't miss this interview. It's next. Another big week for the Trump administration and a lot to talk about with my next guest, former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci. He joins me now from the Hamptons. Thanks for taking the time out, Anthony. All right, you may have just heard...
I requested a beach backdrop. No, I'm saying I requested a beach bag. I didn't get it, though.
Yeah, no. Sorry, but you're there, so I don't care. But listen, we were just talking with Patty Blagojevich. A lot of people think that 14 years in jail for her husband, who apparently had upset the Obama administration, was a bit much, given there was nothing other than their run-of-the-mill, you know, campaign stuff where, you know, what you guys should do is, you know, let's do some fundraising. I mean, come on, who doesn't do that? Your local mayor does it.
Well, my heart goes out to her. I thought the story that she's telling about her children was obviously very sympathetic to her. But what happened there was the sort of the fire starter for what ultimately they ended up doing to candidate Trump and President Trump, because they were getting away with so much latitude and prosecutorial overreach and basically weaponizing these agencies and using them as political instruments to take out their enemies. And so whether they were crimes like Dinesh D'Souza or the nonsense and the factual incorrectness of the Blagojevich situation, they knew that they could put people in jail, make big splashes, and really disrupt and subvert the rule of law. And so one of the things that the president is doing by putting out these pardons, he's basically sending a message to the American people that this nonsense is over. He's effectively resetting the fairness in the judicial process, Judge. And so you know, I'm super happy about that, particularly for the people I know that I know were treated unfairly.
You know what's amazing about it? So many of the presidents wait until their last week or even their last day in office to pardon individuals. President Trump is being transparent. He's doing it now. He's willing to take them on. Give me whatever your criticism is. But, you know, here's the difference between what they did and what a lot of them did. I mean, nobody gave Donald Trump money to do this. And if you think about Bill Clinton pardoning Mark Rich after his wife gave him millions of dollars for whatever, I don't know, maybe the foundation, the library, and he does it on his way out. This president has the fortitude or the chutzpah, let's say, to just do it and say, you know what, come at me, I'll tell you why.
Well, he has the constitutional right to do that. What has not been mentioned all week is that President Clinton also pardoned his brother Roger Clinton for cocaine trafficking and cocaine use. And by the way, I have absolutely no problem with him doing that. That is his constitutional right to do so. And so I'm proud of the president's moves. It's once again the disruptor in chief doing the things that he thinks make sense for the American people and is off the mark of that system that we now call the swamp, Judge. you were talking about Trey Gowdy earlier in the show. I have an enormous amount of respect for Trey Gowdy. But what happens when you spend too much time in that system, you get some swamp juice on you. And so he's saying things now where he's parsing things in a way that Trey Gowdy 2-3 years ago wouldn't be sounding the way he's sounding today on the way out.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
And I don't know what his future is. But it just smells like he's going to be doing a lobbyist job or something along those lines to be talking the way he is.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense, and I agree with you. But I want to continue to talk about what has gone on this week with Ivanka and the left, the mainstream media and the left-wing liberals. What do you think of what happened with Samantha Bee?
Well, listen, I mean, it's an axiomatic fact that there's a double standard in our society because the left controls the mainstream media and most of Hollywood. And so Samantha Bee, she'll get full latitude and license. Apologies accepted, no problem. We'll issue a tweet and a statement. Somebody on the right that does the same thing, they want to hit the eject button like they did in the Austin Powers movie and flip people into the fire. And so they do that constantly. And it's upsetting. And, Sean Hannity and I have actually debated this. He originally wasn't for boycotts. Now he is for boycotts because, unfortunately, if you don't fight fire with fire, Judge, Sean's position was in the beginning, look, I don't want anybody boycotted. I believe in free speech. Right. But then they start this boycott nonsense on him. And he's like, okay, well, if we don't fight fire with fire, we're not going to be able to cease fire.
All right.
Exactly.
Anthony,
so for me, I don't want people losing their jobs, but at the end of the day, we have to stop this nonsense.
Well, it's crazy, and especially with Roseanne, you don't have to end the show. I mean, plus, and I know what she said was horrible, but anyway, Anthony Scaramucci, I mean, you don't have to get rid of the show with everybody else, is what I'm saying. There's between the camera people, the writers, the actors. Anthony, good to have you on the show tonight. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Okay. Samantha Bee finally sees justice. Street justice, that is. Find out what America thinks about the foul-mouthed TV host. And next, Candace Owens joins me live to talk about the most outrageous things we heard this week from the left. Justice rolls on in a moment. And here she comes. Justice. Now, take a listen to what I heard on CNN this week.
He's made it more popular, I think, to be openly racist.
Are you suggesting that they're racist, or they're
yes?
The people who vote, all the people who voted for Donald Trump are racist?
Yes.
And that's just one of the most outrageous comments I've heard this week. Joining me now, Turning Point Communication Director Candace Owens. Candace, so good to have you back on the show. So is it true, I won't even ask you that, are all the people who voted for Donald Trump racist? I mean, where did they get off saying this stuff?
You have to give her some credit for saying it with a straight face and with a little bit of passion behind her. So we're going to give her a little bit of credit there. But I don't know. Am I the only one that's completely bored with this? Like, this narrative is just, it's exhausting. Maybe it stung a little bit the first billion times they said it. But now it's just like, okay, guys, let's wrap this little party up. And now it's ridiculous. There's no meaning to it. It's just them unwilling to accept that maybe people have different ideas and beliefs.
Okay, but here's the problem. You know, it's like something that you were talking about with people saying they'd rather vote for date an MS-13 gang member than a Trump supporter. I mean, these are young people. These are millennials. And here's my concern, that people are buying this crap. You say something often enough and people think it's true.
Well, that's definitely true. And I think that primarily with the younger generation, they're a target because they're already in their school systems. They're in college. So it's indoctrination happening at the highest levels. When they get out into the real world and they start to understand how mortgages work and how to manage a checkbook, they go, oh, well, maybe they're voting for different reasons and voting with their brains and not just their emotions.
But do you think, it's interesting, though, do you think that the schools, the education system is kind of, causing them to think this way and to buy this stuff as opposed to being, somewhat critical of information you hear?
Oh, I know this for a fact. I don't just think it, I know it. This is exactly what we do at Turning Point USA. We go and we talk to these students on campus. Just take a look at a textbook. You see so many students that are speaking out out saying that their professors are upset with them for being Trump supporters. They're being tortured for being conservative.
Yeah.
It is not a safe place to be on a college campus today and hold conservative beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that because I've spoken on college campuses. But, you know, here's an ad that I want you to listen to. I think we have one coming up here.
After 9/11, the greatest threat to our democracy lived in a cave. Today, he lives in the White House.
Okay. The greatest threat to our democracy lived in a cage, and this guy's running for political office, and he thinks the greatest threat to democracy lives in the White House today. How outrageous is this?
Yeah, that's not as funny as the other one. I think this is actually very serious. We refer to this colloquially as Trump derangement syndrome, but it's a real thing. You know, people become so obsessed and so deranged with the idea of not understanding how Trump got into the White House that they're willing to correlate him and also forgive people that have done abhorrent things in the history of the world. They're willing to forgive those people and paint them to be lighthearted characters like Hitler, like Mussolini I've seen, and now we're talking about Osama bin Laden. So this is very serious and just goes to show you that this man does not possess a modicum of intelligence enough to win office anywhere.
But let me ask you this. This guy made an ad, had enough money to make this ad, okay? He is running for office, and I don't want to give him too much credit or attention, but I find this absolutely frightening.
It is.
That someone in the United States of America, this guy is on the screen, his name is Dan Helmer, that would actually say that Donald Trump is worse than Osama bin Laden.
It is actually frightening, and that's why I said it's something that we need to have a serious discussion about, because that's scary. That's a person
Candace, when do we get to the discussion?
I know. I feel like you and I have been having it all the time. Right? We're constantly going out there and saying this.
Yeah.
And certainly our president is out there having the discussion all the time as well. But the parents that are upset about Donald Trump's presidency need to exit this sort of an extreme narrative and say to their children, listen, maybe I don't like him personally, but this is very extreme.
Yeah, it's frightening. Anyway, Candace Owen, so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, and speaking of outrageous, Samantha Bee gets some street justice. It's next. So what do people really think of Samantha Bee's hateful comments? Take a look at tonight's Street Justice. All right, so here I am in Manhattan trying to figure out what New Yorkers think of what Samantha Bee said about President Trump's daughter, Ivanka. So Samantha Bee calls President Trump's daughter, Ivanka, a feckless C word that most people have never even said. But she still has her show. Should she be able to keep her show?
Well, I don't think she'd get much support for using language like that. I wouldn't watch it.
So if that were said against a Democrat president's daughter like Chelsea Clinton.
Don't forget it, the world would be in uproar.
Okay, and she would lose her show.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. If Roseanne Barr lost her show, what should happen to Samantha Bee?
I think she has the right to say what she wants to say, but I think it's better for people to not pay any attention.
I definitely believe in the First Amendment. She has the right to say something,
right?
But she should be held accountable the same way Roseanne had the right to say something, should be held accountable.
Well, that was personal, it wasn't racial.
It was misogynistic. Woman-hating.
But a woman said it.
That doesn't make it any less misogynistic.
I didn't say it did.
Is there a difference between the way they treat liberals and the way they treat Republicans?
Oh yeah, I think there's a double standard across the board. It's kind of not just Democratic and Republican, but it kind of, a lot of people are hypocritic. They'll say one thing and do another.
So Samantha Bee says something terrible about President Trump's daughter. She calls her a feckless C word. I can't even say the word.
She should be fired also then. Right?
But she's not being fired.
Why is that? Fair is fair.
I really believe it's not appropriate to say that kind of things in front of television, in public. You can think something, but I think to keep it for yourself and not for the big audience.
Huh? What should happen to... What should happen? I love you too! But what about Samantha Bee? Should she lose her job? We'll be right back. That was Persia the dog. Finally tonight, don't forget to friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Judge_Jeanine. You never have to miss justice. Set your DVR if you're not going to be home. Plus, get ready. My new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. The case against the anti-Trump conspiracy comes out in July, but it's my birthday today, so you can pre-order it now on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. And to all those people I went to Israel with on United West, it was great being with you all. To Prime Minister Netanyahu, the only person he gave an interview on the day of the opening of the embassy, it was a pleasure interviewing you. And I want to thank the Vanderhovens for opening their home to us when we were there. Thanks for watching. I'm Jeanine Pirro, advocating for truth, justice, and the American way. The Greg Gutfeld Show is coming up, and I'll see you next Saturday.
I've had a couple of meals with